I have a tip that is going to make Mandarin pronunciation a lot easier for you. And it has to do with where the tongue tip goes. There are only three positions that your tongue is going to be, your tongue tip should be in for the difficult sounds. So what we're going to do is remove the easy sounds from the equation to limit what we're having to think about. So which sounds are easy? Bo, po, mo, wo. These sounds, some of them are a little bit different than English. We won't go into that, but ultimately, these are not tongue tip issues. These are sounds made with your lips. Labiodental is just means your lip touching your teeth. F, exactly the same as English. Don't worry about it. Um, Velar, like ga, ka, ha, yang. So, and this only occurs at the end of words, right? So velar basically means your the back of your tongue is pushing up against the top. So it's not a tongue tip thing for these sounds. But also these sounds are not in the same way as bilabial, slight difference with things like voicing and aspiration, but it doesn't really matter. Like you can fixate on that if you want, and it will help. It will make you sound a little bit better, but that kind of naturally happens, I think, for most people who keep speaking. The ones that I really want to focus on are these three. The yellow, the green, and the dark green. So I'm just going to call this one dental, meaning teeth. Retroflex just means your tongue going up, and like alveopalatal, like I study linguistics, so I know what these things mean, but I don't. It doesn't. You don't think of it like if these words sound annoying to you, don't worry about them. Alveopalatal is just here's what I want you to think about. Dental is this. These are your teeth. This is dental. Retroflex, this. So just think of we're not going to say any of these words. We're going to say middle, up, and down. All right. Now, let's be very clear though. This is what we're talking about. Okay. I can do this. I'm going to do this for most of the video so I can move it around and stuff. But like, let's make sure you know what I'm actually talking about because this is a little bit vague, right? So the dental sounds, this is a little, some English speakers may articulate here, but I personally, my tongue is up, almost touching that green thing. When I say like take, I have my tongue is not touching my teeth at all. I'm saying take, it's that like flat ridge right behind the teeth is where I'm putting my tongue for that sound. And what you'll notice is that Chinese doesn't do that. Um, no, like the Chinese just does this for this whole section. All of these sounds are produced with the tongue in that middle position. And then the the down position is going to be ji, qi, xi. Those are um, the only sounds articulated with the tongue in that position. Now, I mean, this is like, we'll get to this in a second, but this is like not a tongue tip thing. The yeah, yeah, you can, yeah. Um, so ji, qi, xi, and later in the video, I'll talk more about like what is the difference between these. I'm sure that's been covered a lot, but I want to be a bit exhaustive here. But feel free to kind of piece out of the video once. The main thing I want to get across in this video is the tongue tip thing, and I want to try to explain why I think this is helpful to think of in this way. Um, and for the retroflex, when I started learning Chinese, I looked at a picture that looked like this. And I don't know about you, but I think this is a little bit inaccurately far back, to be quite honest with you. Like, let's look at another one here. This looks okay to me. This is probably a little bit too far forward. What I would say though is that I think there's no right answer here. Certain, especially when it comes to regional variation, dialects, accents, certain speakers definitely pull the tongue back more than others. And you obviously have a ton of dialects with no retroflex at all. Um, but if you were to do this, like let's do it. Like that's it's way too far back, I think. So like this is that's pretty far back too, but it's okay, I guess. I think the main thing to do here is when you look at an English sh, notice that there's no like curling of the tongue and that it's barely further back than like when I said where do I put my tongue when I say take, shake, take, shake, take. I think shake and take, I have my tongue in the same spot in English, but the retroflex is further back than any English sound. So as long as you're getting it further back, so say shoe and then move your tongue back at past, say shoe, sh, make just say sh, and then notice where your tongue tip is, sh, and then slide it back, and you'll feel it hit this ridge. That's the alveolar ridge. You'll feel it like slide across that like sharpness of the ridge and get it somewhere behind there, and you're retroflexing. So that's up, middle, down, right? Okay. So what I want to get across with this is that um, the mistake I was making for a long time was that I was articulating because, and this is, this happens a lot with first language, your interference from your first language a lot of the time. Um, these sounds to me, these two were new Chinese sounds for me. Z, z, these were new sounds. And because they were new, I realized like, okay, yeah, like my tongue, I'm not sure where my tongue should be, but like I knew it was a new thing. But da, ta, da, ta, sa, these sounds, oh, I know those, like they're the same as in English. And ultimately, like if you put your tongue here or, you know, the English position of like this for making the da, ta, sa is, it's going to be a minor, like I think I can hear the difference because the reason I realized I was doing it wrong is when I said 天每天我天天都学中文，张天明过来，他刚刚过来，我不知道。if you did integrated Chinese, Zhang Tianming, he was like the main character. Tianming. So when I was doing those sounds, when I was saying like Tian, I noticed something was off. Like I could feel something wrong. And it was really frustrating because I was like, how could that be wrong? And I'll show you how it can be wrong in a second. But the important part of this middle stuff is that just notice that these sounds, specifically the weird new Chinese sounds and the sounds you're used to, should all be in the same spot on the teeth. Now, you can be like between the teeth. It's okay to be like right on the top teeth or something as well. And I think that it's not like, but you don't want to go off the teeth. You want to be on the teeth. Um, and so to give you an example of what I mean by this, if I say, for example, um, 电子, 电子 or 陶瓷, I shouldn't, first of all, like one mistake you could be making is that you articulate these up here and then you're articulating these down here. So there's no need to say like 陶子, 陶子 or 电子. It's the same spot. 陶子, 电子, 电子, 陶子. So you have, notice like as you're saying sounds like that, you just keep your tongue in the middle. You don't need to move it. And so like as far as the tongue tip goes, there's only three places it can be: up, middle, and down. But if you make the mistake of introducing this position here as a possible place that you make certain sounds, now you've created four tongue positions for yourself rather than three. And that's going to muddle, it's going to muddle things. It's going to muddle things for you just as like a physical comfort thing. That sounds very vague, but like if you try to think of there are only three positions your tongue tip would need to be in, and the clearest example I can just give you is that 电子, 陶子. You don't 陶子, 电子. You don't need to move the tongue tip around when you say something like that. An unnecessary tongue movement is going to create issues. The clearest one I can show you is this. So remember, pinyin has a bunch of weird spelling rules, spelling exceptions. And as learners of Mandarin, what tends to happen with us, I think, is that many of us never remember those rules. We just learn the pinyin and we forget certain things, like that tian is actually t plus this, like yan, yan zhong, yan zhong, yan and tian have the same exact sound in them, but we just spell. Pinyin decided, oh well, like this looks bad. I guess they decided this looks ugly, so let's write it like this to make it more like. I don't know what the exact impetus behind this was, but it can confuse you. You might forget that there's a Y sound here because there's no Y, right? Now, what I want you to think about here is if I think about this, if I try to go from a t sound here to how do we make a Y sound? Yeah. To make a Y sound, you bring the middle of your tongue up to the roof of your mouth, right? Yeah. Yeah. Well, actually, let's see, it's to the alveolar ridge, like yeah. So you basically bring the middle of your tongue up to to this spot basically. So you kind of bunch your tongue up and push it behind not touching the teeth, but like at that ridge behind the teeth. So with that in mind, if we want to say tian, what we actually need to do is we're going tian, tian, tian. Now, from a purely physical, mechanical perspective, what movement is easier? Tian or tian, tian. So you notice that to make a Y sound, you basically you want to get the middle of your tongue close to where your tongue tip would be, making an English t sound. So if your tongue tip is where you need to bring the middle of your tongue, it's in the way. And I think that's what I was noticing when I was saying um, tian and articulate and having my tongue tip in the wrong spot, was that I couldn't it it wasn't moving correctly, and you get a specific type of like wrong quality to the sound, to the entire word, because you're not getting the right like transition from the t to the y. You're missing that transition because you're not moving your tongue. Your tongue isn't making the right movement because you've basically like shot yourself in the foot by starting the sound in the wrong spot, and you've made it more difficult to move your tongue from one spot to the other. And what I've noticed as I've fixed this problem is that it's just easier. It's easier to talk. I don't notice that issue when I say like tian tian tian. 我天天都学中文，我每天都我我星期天没有工作，我那个逃 like even like what's another one that would make sense for that to be an issue, like um tia, like tia guanyin, tia guanyin. Is it, what's the tones for tia? Tia, it's, is it all first tone for this word? Are they, I hate when I look up words like this and they don't give me the, oh, it's tia. Yeah, tia guan, tia, tia, tia. Try it yourself. Like try to say tia, especially for a third tone, um, where it's more like tense a little bit, and you have to go put your tongue where you would to say sh, tia, tia. You'll notice like there's it's an awkward motion to make. Whereas if it's here, tia, 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 you can get that up way. It's just way more easy, right? Tia, tia versus tia, tia, tia. Like you can even feel just with your finger. It's your finger feels like this is pretty smooth and this is contorted and awkward and crunched up. So that's the main really big um, thing I would tell you with that is that notice that's the advantage of realizing that there are only three tongue positions and knowing which um like knowing that these are all the same position. I think that's the biggest one. Like I think people are pretty obviously clear that this is people know that these are retroflexes and that the R is a retroflex approximant. I don't think people are too confused about that. GTC, I think people, a lot of people don't have their tongue in the right spot when they do this, but they probably are consistently putting it in the wrong spot for all three of these sounds, right? Okay, so that's my main point. Feel free to peace out if you think you're good otherwise, but I want to I just want to be a bit thorough here and explain um, what is going on here with these sounds. What does affricate mean? What is the difference between these sounds? I find this really helpful. It's not going to improve your pronunciation overnight. And honestly, the best way to improve your pronunciation is to listen a lot, a lot, a lot, as much as you can to give yourself a lot of input is more important than doing this thing. However, just knowing, oh, maybe my tongue, I'm going to think about my tongue only being in three spots. It, it's going to, I think it's very helpful to learn that and be aware of it. And it will, obviously the input is more important, but this can really give you a boost. So let's look at what does an affricate mean? So basically, um, we have a stop. A stop would be they call them plosive too, but like um, I like to call it a stop. So when you say like d d d or t, what you're actually doing is your tongue is a stop because it's stopping the air from escaping. T, 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 t. And then you release the pressure, you release the stoppage, the blockage, or whatever you want to call it, and then the air escapes and it gives it that certain quality of the stop. Um, Now, an affricate, though, is a combination where you you have a stop, but then you rather than quickly releasing it, you slowly release it to create kind of a vibration as you release it. So like the difference between the English z is a fricative. It's just you create that vibration, but you don't put a stop in front of it. Zzz, right? There's no stopping. You're just doing the partial blockage would be the way to think of it. You partially block it to get the vibration. Zzz. But in affricate, you have a stop in front of the vibration. Z, z. So it's basically da plus z, right? Z, z. So that's why it's z and not z. It's not um it's not like you don't say zao, you say zao, right? zuo. You don't say zuo, you say zuo, zuo. So that's what affricate means. Now, so what you can see here is these sounds are all affricates. So z is exactly the same as zh, but the only difference is you move the tongue. Z, zh, z, zh, z, zh. So you just have to make sure zh, zh, you can do the zh, z, zh, z, zh. But the point is, it's the same idea of stop into vibration, but the tongue is in a different spot. Now, what about here? Same exact thing, but now the tongue is down. Ji, ji. So you can hear it, right? Like there's a stop. Ji, and then the vibration. Well, what if we didn't have a stop? Boom, we just have these. Xi, si, 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 xi, shi. Notice there's no stop. It's just that it's that the vibration, right? So it's just the partial stop creating the vibration to get those fricative sounds. Now, the aspirated affricate is aspiration just means you shoot air out when you make the sound. So like is a obvious aspirated sound. So here, z is the same. So we have z has no aspiration, and you can tell that if you put your hand in front of your mouth. Z, z. Obviously, some air is coming out. Like I think some people get confused about that. Like, oh, no air can come out, but you're making a sound. You're making a sound by pushing air from your lungs through your mouth. There's going to be air coming out, but the aspiration is a puff of air. So like z, 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 z. Like I don't mean to hold my hand out, but you can hear the puff, right? Like z, 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 z. You can hear the difference, right? There's a big puff on the z. And then again, same exact thing here. Z, you have the tongue in the middle, pull it up to retroflex. Ch, ch, you hear the puff of air, right? J, j, ch, j, ch. You hear the difference. Puff, no puff, right? And then here again, this is qi, ch, qi, qi, and the tongue is down, right? Qi, xi, ji, qi. So these are like brothers or sisters, right? Like so this is just the same thing, but this has a puff of air. Ji, ji, qi, ji, qi, and then the R sound. Probably I shouldn't even talk about this one, but like because it, there's some different variations of pronouncing this, um, but it's generally considered an approximant, which means you move your tongue up like you're going to do a retroflex, but you don't commit it. You don't like really push your tongue to the to make contact. So you have like ren, 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 but you notice like if I make contact, I'll get like ren, which isn't. Some people might pronounce like that, but it's ren, ren. Some people say like ren, ren, and this is one of those sounds like a lot of dialects don't have a retroflex. So like my mother-in-law has no retroflex in her dialect. She'll say 很热 不吃吧很热 so like 不吃还不能吃太热了 so like she just has no retroflex. So for her, it's just this, right? She doesn't ever have to do this. 很热很热不要吃太热. She just doesn't need. She has two tongue tip positions, but um. So I think that is pretty clear, and yeah, like let me know what you think if this is helpful. If not, please let me know. Thanks for watching.